Greetings, fellow detectives. Wizard Kitten here, bringing you a new Nancy Drew analysis video. As we move into a new and extremely complicated school year, I wanted to do a video that I have been planning for quite some time because I think it is especially pertinent now. Today's video will be discussing mental health as it relates to the Nancy Drew PC games. As such, I will be discussing a variety of things related to mental health, including certain diagnoses like anxiety and PTSD, as well as symptoms, coping strategies, and character development in the games. This video is going to be largely positive, but if these are sensitive topics for you, please know that they are the main focus of this video. Please also note that I am not a mental health professional, and if you are looking for advice or support in this area, it is always best to talk to your doctor so that you can be referred to a professional. I will link some support outlets in the description of this video as well. Now, today's video will be examining two aspects of mental health as they relate to the games: depiction of mental health within the Nancy Drew series, and how the Nancy Drew series can be a really positive outlet for those struggling with their own mental health. Let's start first with how mental health is portrayed throughout the Nancy Drew series. Now, it is rare for mental health to be directly discussed in entertainment, and when it is more often than not stigmatized. All it takes is a quick Google search on the portrayals of mental health in media and entertainment to find a plethora of articles about how mental health isn't exactly portrayed in the most positive light on the big screen or the small one. More often than not, mental health diagnoses are exaggerated, inaccurate, or belittled in most forms of mass media. One form of media that actually sometimes does better in this area is video games. It is still, of course, very easy to find negative portrayals of mental health in video games, particularly among horror or psychological thriller games that take place in sanitariums or mental hospitals. But on the flip side, the video game industry has turned out some truly beautiful and thought-provoking explorations of mental health in a way that not a lot of other industries have. So where do the Nancy Drew games stack up with respect to mental health portrayals? Well, first off, there really isn't a lot, especially if we are considering times when mental health is directly mentioned. I reached out to all of you fellow detectives on Instagram at WizardKittenYT and in our channel Discord, linked in the description, to see what you thought about portrayals of mental health in the Nancy Drew games, so that I could include more thoughts besides just my own in this analysis. One lovely fellow detective pointed out that mental health really isn't discussed much in the games, but that Linda Penvillin may be one instance where it is. I definitely agree with this, and think Linda is a great character to examine. In Curse of Blackmore Manor, Nancy is called to England to investigate why Linda, a normally happy, gentle person, has suddenly cloistered herself in her room, refuses to be seen, and is more emotionally volatile. The game lets us know that Linda very recently got married, became a stepmother, and moved from the United States to England to live at Blackmore Manor with her new family. Needless to say, she's been through a lot of major life changes, and understandably, is going through a lot in terms of her mental health. Quick warning here, I am going to be spoiling some parts of Curse of Blackmore Manor in this next discussion. We learn throughout this mystery that Linda is being made to think that she has been cursed and is now undergoing lycanthropic metamorphosis. In short, she's turning into a werewolf. Nancy speaks to an expert who explains that people in vulnerable states can sometimes experience this phenomenon if somebody or something takes advantage of them. Linda likely was experiencing some struggles with her mental health before this whole curse business even happened because of the many sudden and major life changes that she had to endure. These struggles were amplified when somebody took advantage of this emotional state and made her believe that she was transforming into a werewolf. This portrayal of mental health toes the line of a genuine depiction and one that is being skewed. I think the game does a decent job of explaining that Linda has not quote-unquote gone crazy at the end, because many of the physical symptoms she experiences were purposeful on the part of the culprit. Physical symptoms also often manifest for those who struggle with mental health, with things like racing heartbeats, fatigue, headaches, muscle tension, and so on being very common. The mind is a powerful thing, and very often it can impact what happens in our bodies. Ultimately, I appreciate the depth that this whole arc gives to Linda's character. And it's refreshing to see mental health discussed. While this one gets a bit too close to reinforcing some stereotypes, let's look at another example where mental health is directly mentioned. Colton Birchfield from Ghost of Thornton Hall. Another quick warning, I will be spoiling some parts of Ghost of Thornton Hall in this discussion. Colton directly tells Nancy that he had a hard time as a child and that it involved seeing a therapist for a while. Colton also explains that Clara knows why he went to see a therapist, but, quote, still won't let it go. I think this is a fantastic, truly standout moment in the Nancy Drew series for two reasons. One, it breaks the stigma of going to speak with a therapist as something to be ashamed of, particularly for a man. Colton is open about seeing a therapist and directly tells us that it was beneficial for him. The second reason I love this moment is because it sheds light on the stigma of mental health. Clara is suspicious of Colton in this game, and even goes so far as to indicate that he might be the one responsible for Jessalyn's disappearance, purely because he, quote, has some issues. Clara is judging Colton and even accusing him of bad intentions simply because he struggles with his mental health. It isn't clear what specifically Colton has worked through, but shedding light on the hurtful and harmful way that others react to mental health is groundbreaking and refreshing. Does Colton seem at all dangerous? No, and frankly, it's ridiculous to treat him as such. This realistic depiction of mental health is deep and thought-provoking, and I genuinely appreciate its portrayal. Beyond these two instances, mental health in the Nancy Drew games isn't really directly mentioned, but it is alluded to. Many of you fellow detectives wrote to me giving examples of some characters who you thought might deal with mental health, and many of you also noted that you feel that mental health could be more prevalent in the games. On that note, there are multiple characters throughout the series who vaguely mention something along the lines of going through a tough time, or who we can infer have had such an experience. I absolutely cannot diagnose any of these characters, but I think all of these following characters could be working through some mental health struggles. Joseph Hughes, after losing his job and his brother. He experiences a great deal of life changes as an older man, is separated somewhat from reality, and is grieving the loss of what he used to know. The whole Shimizu family after the death of Kasumi. Takai, Miwako, and Yumi all experience trauma, refuse almost entirely to talk about it, and blame themselves for what happened. Joy Trent, after losing both her mother and father. She experiences lapses in memory, demonstrates some anxious tendencies like social isolation and chewing, and on the whole is grieving a great deal of loss while also working through financial stress. Henry Bollet, after losing his parents at a young age and now his guardian. He first experienced trauma with the loss of his parents, and then grew up feeling unloved and discarded by his guardian. Harper Thornton, working through an intensely complicated childhood. She notes that she was institutionalized by her family when she was younger, is emotionally volatile, demonstrates significant difficulties with trust, and is separated somewhat from reality. Manette, who struggles with emotional control and expression. She appears to exhibit very high and very low emotions, and works with a therapist to help in managing her mood. Dr. Malachi Craven, who also struggles with emotional control and expression. He experiences significant difficulties managing his anger, which comes through as destruction of property, making rash decisions, and struggling to connect with others. Colin Baxter, who also struggles with emotional control and expression. His emotional state can flip on a dime. He struggles significantly with confidence, and he struggles to relate to others. Rachel Hubbard, who demonstrates a great deal of withdrawal. She purposefully isolates herself from her peers, struggles to develop friendships, and is working through a great deal of academic and financial stress. Carl Weschler, who who struggles with feeling cursed and therefore demonstrates withdrawal and avoidance. He minimizes the interaction that he has with others, believing himself to be fundamentally broken, and avoids his responsibilities for fear of the outcomes. Mason Quinto, who demonstrates tendencies towards possible obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD. He's upset when items on his desk are moved and always puts them back a certain way. He struggles to relate to others platonically and romantically, follows a specific routine when dating, and demonstrates rigidity in his ways of thinking. Moira Chisholm, following the death of her partner. Through letters, we learn that Moira has isolated herself and has been avoiding work. And Gunnar Tonnesson, following a tragic boating accident. Gunnar experienced significant trauma, both from the accident itself and the subsequent loss. He becomes defensive easily and speaks tangentially often. I want to make something clear after going through these descriptions. All of these characters are designed to be human, meaning that they are simply moving through the world as best they can, while sometimes making mistakes, sometimes experiencing triumphs, sometimes feeling overwhelmed by their mental health, and sometimes finding ways to work through it. No matter where a person is on that journey is valid. These characters are designed to be flawed humans. It's not their mental health that makes them flawed. It's the fact that they are humans on the journey of life, and their mental health is simply a component of that along the way. So, since the mental health of these characters is not directly addressed, we are left to speculate, which again makes it much more difficult to have much of a discussion about what is really going on. It is also important to note that every single person experiences difficulties with mental health at some point in their life, particularly after traumatic experiences, as indicated with many of the characters previously mentioned. However, when anxiety, depression, fear, etc. become chronic and/or life-altering, this is when someone could be diagnosed as having a mental health disorder or illness. An anxiety disorder, for example, is different than typical levels of day-to-day anxiety. So, we have no confirmed diagnoses in the games, 2 pretty direct references to mental health, and a hearty handful of other characters with strong tendencies. So how have the Nancy Drew games done? Overall, I would say they've done okay. Mental health is still not something that is often brought up in conversation due to the stigma surrounding it, but things are slowly starting to change. The fact that we have a good chunk of characters, though we definitely could have more, with signs of mental health struggles means that there is at least some representation present, though not confirming those struggles means that the game still didn't really want to talk about it. Another fellow detective also pointed out that the day-to-day mental health of characters is almost never, if ever, discussed, particularly when it relates to our main characters like Nancy or Ned. Another fellow detective also noted, "I think from the games, I would have just loved to see less extreme, more accurate portrayals of mental illnesses, like a character with an apparent anxiety disorder, or have a character open up about their own mental health in a candid way." I absolutely agree with both of these assessments. More candid, more honest, and more recognizable portrayals would have added a great deal in terms of representation. As far as I can tell, and please let me know in the comments what you think, I don't believe that the Nancy Drew games have presented too much that is harmful regarding mental health. One fellow detective did very expertly point out to me that Minette is definitely treated as mad or crazy by the other characters without really knowing her motivations or experiences. This is absolutely true, and definitely worth noting. In addition to this, the Nancy Drew games could certainly do more to address mental health, though to be fair, I think pretty much everything could. I do also think that they've done a relatively good job of ensuring that culprits are not the only ones working through mental health, and also ensuring that not all of the culprits appear to demonstrate tendencies towards having a mental illness. It is still a harmful stereotype that someone with a mental health condition is unstable and therefore more likely to commit crimes, which is patently untrue, Clara. All in all, I'm pretty proud of the Nancy Drew games in terms of the representations that they did include, but would still recommend more. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. And now, switching gears somewhat, let's talk about the Nancy Drew games and how they might fit into the life of someone who struggles with mental health. I've been open on this channel with all you fellow detectives about how I have generalized anxiety disorder, which means that I have chronic anxiety on a day-to-day basis, regardless of setting or circumstances. I have been open about this because I believe that it is important to talk about mental health. It is so much more common than many people think, and furthermore, I don't believe that people should ever be made to feel like they need to hide a part of themselves. As someone with anxiety, the Nancy Drew Games provide a place of solace. At my fingertips, I have access to more than 30 mysteries where I can play as Nancy Drew, a brave, confident, and spontaneous young woman with a drive to make the world a better place. The insecurities that I have in real life can vanish when I become Nancy. For as long as I am in Nancy's world, I can be brave, I can be fearless, I can do things that I could never do in real life. Beyond that, these games are mysteries, which means there is an answer at the end, and if I persevere, I can find it. Part of having anxiety means worrying about what ifs and should haves all day long, every day. A mystery, in contrast, and a well-written one as so many of these games are, brings a certain degree of inner peace, because this is something that I can truly solve. These games are comforting. These games are my happy place. I also reached out to fellow detectives to get more perspectives than just my own. One fellow detective shared, "There is something to be said about anxiety and repetitive behavior. For instance, studies show that people with anxiety often rewatch the same show over and over again because it soothes them. Same can be said here with these games." I connect with this a lot because people in my life, family and friends, who don't have anxiety have always asked me why I can replay the games over and over. After all, I know how they end. Isn't that the point of a mystery? The first time it is, sure. But the second, third, 20th time? It's exactly what the fellow detective said. It's soothing. It's predictable. I don't have to worry about the outcome because I know that I will be happy at the end. The same fellow detective also mentioned, "Since I have PTSD, I love playing a character that isn't afraid of things I am. There's almost a disassociated therapeutic side to it. It's like, in this world, I'm not scared to talk to men. I'm Nancy. I'm bold and fearless." Here are some more quotes from other fellow detectives illustrating similar ideas. "I was on crutches for 7 months during my junior year of high school because of a rare joint condition in my knee. It was not fun, especially because I was involved in 2 sports at the time and couldn't do either of them. I ended up replaying almost all of the ND games after my knee surgery, and it was great. It was something that I could still do just as well as I did before, even though I couldn't walk." Some other good things in the games that help with mental health are the control of the point-and-click style, like being able to make choices has helped with my anxiety. "ND games in the right time gave me the feeling a little girl can do anything if she really wants. I felt like a hero when I made skills learned from ND games useful in real life. They taught me to always fight for justice." The games meant a lot to me growing up. I was bullied a lot, honestly, from elementary through junior high, and was also sick a lot, and they were such incredible escapes. I got started on the books first, and it was so magical because she was full of sass and spunk and courage, and it was everything I wanted to be. I additionally had many other fantastic fellow detectives reach out and say that the Nancy Drew games have helped them work through generalized anxiety, social anxiety, and grief. Ultimately, what we end up with are a couple of very noticeable themes. The Nancy Drew games bring a unique sense of comfort, control, and escape to a hectic world. For those struggling with mental health, the solace that these games provide is truly something special. For me personally, playing a Nancy Drew game is one of the easiest ways to slow down my racing mind and redirect its energy to a problem that can be solved, encapsulated in beautiful and engaging settings. They are a fantastic outlet for anyone, but I think they can be especially helpful when it comes to mental health. Thank you so much for watching, fellow detectives. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I appreciate you taking the time to watch it. Please let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and I would love it if you would consider subscribing and to join our family of fellow detectives. The channel has grown a lot this summer, and I hope that it brings as much joy to you all as it does to me, particularly as we start what in all likelihood will be a difficult school year. Thanks for watching, fellow detectives. I will see you soon.